We have these moms after these vaginal deliveries thinking that they're supposed to get up and walk and exercise and be back to normal after 6 weeks. Nobody would be back to exercising and climbing camelback after like the first week or two. It would be natural to rest.
Welcome to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, the podcast where we debunk the eat less, move more, shrink more mentality and focus on what really matters, which includes your relationship with your body, food, self-worth, and the behaviors that align with all of those. I'm your host, Christina Hathaway, licensed therapist with specialized training in food and body obsession, certified personal trainer and nutrition coach. At the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast, we believe what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. So let's have a conversation about that. Before we get into today's episode, I want to make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you don't want to miss any content that's being dropped, make sure you hit that notification bell as well. I also want to know who are the people you want to hear from on this show and what topics would you like me to continue to cover. Thank you so much for your continued support. Now, let's get into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Mindset Mirror Connection podcast. I'm so excited that you took time for yourself to learn something about your health. So congratulations. And today, you get to hear from one of my personal support partners. She and I are partners here in the Phoenix area, Dr. Megan Zimmerman. Megan has a Bachelor of Science in Exercise Science from Northern Arizona University and a doctorate in physical therapy from Northwestern University in Chicago. Megan has practiced physical therapy in a variety of settings for over 17 years and found her professional passion in pregnancy and postpartum after giving birth to her first child. Megan has participated in postgraduate training in mat and reformer Pilates by Balanced Body Pilates, is a pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist, and has extensive postgraduate work in pelvic floor physical therapy. One of her primary goals is to provide guidance, education, support to pregnant and postpartum clients with an emphasis on postural education, optimal breathing patterns, pelvic back SI pain, pelvic floor strength training, diastasis recti, rehabilitation Pilates, and return to sports, including running. So she is in it. Megan is also a board member and committee lead for Postpartum Support International Arizona. Dr. Megan, welcome to the show. Yay!
Yay!
One of these days, yes, one of these days, I'm going to get a soundtrack where it's like, yeah. I say that for every single person that we have on. I am so excited to have you here as someone who personally supports my clients. So a lot of guests that come on, they're knowledgeable. We love them, but I know the work you do, and I'm excited to share it with everyone on the pod. So welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you? I feel like we haven't chatted in a while.
I'm doing good. I cannot believe it's October. Like, I was looking at the calendar and I'm in a state of shock.
Yes, I know. We have an on-demand workout program similar to like your Peloton online, and every month there's a new set of workouts that comes on. And I woke up this morning and I was like, I haven't put the new workouts in. So I like ran to my computer and luckily I was able to move them over from last year and update them. But I was like, oh my gosh. I agree with you. I agree. I walk my neighborhood and people already had their Halloween decorations out last week. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so early. Why do they have because October is around the corner. So that's good news for everyone. How's everything been business-wise?
It has been so busy. I always feel like there's a little bit of a lull in the summer. And then as soon as all the moms come back from like summer break, it just hits so hard. And then it's October hits, it's Halloween, and the year is over.
Yeah, right. I know. That's interesting that, I think of moms like they've been clenching their pelvic floor throughout the entire summer and they get to you like once the kids come into school.
It's like they get a deep breath and I'm like, okay, actually, let's learn how to breathe correctly and let's fix the pelvic floor.
Yes. I love that. So we've had other pelvic floor specialist PTs on our show, including your partner, Dr. Caitlin Kakar, and we've touched on a variety of things. However, my client that I work with, she has struggled with prolapse. And I thought, I really want to open up the conversation, not just around prolapse, but incontinence, rib flare, things like that I don't think a lot of people realize that there is treatment for after, obviously, they have a child or Or if that's something that happens midlife, I'm thinking more incontinence and prolapse, especially for me too. After having a hysterectomy, I know that was something that was a possibility for me, you know.
Mhm.
But for those who are new to the podcast, what is the pelvic floor, right? What is it? What does it look like? How does it connect to our core and overall movement?
Mhm. So the pelvic floor lives at the bottom of the pelvis. And I think the easiest way to think of it is it's a hammock. It's a group of muscles and ligaments and connective tissue, and it supports the organs from the front of the body, from the pubic bone to the tailbone, and from each side, the sit bone to the sit bone. And for
Hmm.
women, it supports our bladder, our uterus, and our rectum. And it
Hmm.
plays a really important role in urination, bowel movement, sexual function, and if we choose, childbirth.
Yeah. I feel like every time I hear about the pelvic floor, in my brain, I thought of it as one thing. But when you say it that way, that it's this like supportive hammock, like you said, around all those organs that are so important, obviously, we don't realize that, oh, that's all connected, right? That's all working together. But
Hmm.
for some reason, and I obviously am someone who has a lot of knowledge in the body, I just separate it. I don't know why. And I don't know if other people feel that way or those of you listening, but I'm glad that you said that. It kind of just sits and holds all of that together. With that said, I want to, just for our audience, talk about some of the most common pelvic floor issues that you see in your practice, and then also the ones that I know personally you are a specialist in.
Hmm. So I started initially treating pregnant and postpartum
Mhm.
because that's how I got into pelvic floor. I had a C-section with my first, and I was cleared at 6 weeks, and I went for a run. And about half
Mhm.
a mile into my run, I realized something was really wrong. And I walked back and I realized that I did not know how to treat my postpartum body. I didn't learn
Mhm.
it in PT school. So I did a drastic pivot in my professional learning and professional education. And I started focusing on that population. And as I started treating those moms, I started treating their moms
Right.
for incontinence, for prolapse, for all of these different concerns that I didn't realize I would ever treat in physical therapy. I played soccer in college. I thought I was going to treat soccer players, and all of a
Right.
sudden I was treating pelvic floor.
Mhm.
And I realized that no one was helping women with these concerns, and we needed to have more open conversations and more guidance and more education. So
Mhm.
I love treating urinary incontinence, leaking when we laugh and sneeze and cough. I love treating pelvic organ prolapse, which is
Mhm.
heaviness and a bulge sensation. And I
Mhm.
love treating pain with sex. These are some
Mhm.
of my favorite things I treat, and things that we should not be afraid to seek guidance for.
Absolutely. You know, for me, after my hysterectomy, nobody told me about this. Like, nobody told me about pelvic floor PT. It was not even a conversation. And you guys, that was in 2017. So
Just not
we
that
don't
long ago.
know. We don't have the education. We don't have even our OBGYNs. It wasn't until recently that, no, actually, I have this pain and I still have it in my hip. I have a torn labrum, but also we were concerned with my ovaries and a cyst and stuff like that. I went to the OBGYN and I said, could this be something pelvic floor? And all she did was say, "Oh no, your pelvic floor is," what did she say? It's strong or some word like that, like as if it was okay. And as I talk to people like you, having a tight pelvic floor is also an issue. And knowing how extensive your assessments are and how, you're treating clients, patients, it was not what this OBGYN did. So even this was a year or two ago, still not getting all of the information. So that's why we like to have people like yourself on to get the word out, because again, you might have a pain and I'll tell you, they've said it's a cyst, they said it's gastrointestinal. I'm like, is it just muscular? And I bet if I, finally go see you, you figure it out for me. But okay, so I think that's really important for everyone to hear. Also, what in pregnancy, obviously, what are the typical changes that we see with the pelvic floor, pregnancy, and then postpartum that women who, because we have actually have multiple clients who are pregnant right now. So this is for you guys. What are things that they should be aware of?
Well, congratulations. So
Yeah.
I do a lot of like clients that come in, and typically they come in at the end of the first trimester, or they come in at 20 weeks when I first start seeing clients in pregnancy. And I often just kind of describe to them what's happening, because we've got this hammock muscle that's supporting this uterus. And a pre-pregnancy uterus is about the size of a pear, or about the size of your fist. And then as that pregnancy grows and develops, that uterus is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you were to look in your backyard and you had a hammock back there, you've got this like teeny little like baby bird on that hammock. And then all of a sudden that baby bird is getting bigger and bigger. And then it's becoming a gorilla by the end of the like pregnancy. That is a much bigger ask on that hammock that you've got out in your
Hmm.
backyard. Well, that's the exact same thing that's happening on the hammock inside of your body. So you've got this like big organ that this little pelvic floor muscle has to like support. You've also got these changes in your hormones, specifically estrogen and relaxin, which the job of those hormones are to relax the tissues. So you've got changes in the muscle, then you've got changes to the soft tissue, which is ligaments, connective tissue, which are passively supporting some of the organs and helping to like lift everything up. So everything is just dropping and heavier. And it's a
Hmm.
big demand on these muscles. And then for moms that have vaginal deliveries, during a vaginal delivery, those muscles are stretching 3 to 4 times their natural resting length. So that's a big, big,
Right.
big stretch. So after a vaginal delivery, it's a big resting period. And I
Hmm.
always say, people here in Arizona, we have a very famous hike called Camelback. If you are coming down Camelback and you rolled your ankle really, really, really badly, the last thing you'd want to do is go back on a hike the next day. And
Right.
yet we have these moms after these vaginal deliveries thinking that they're supposed to get up and walk and exercise and be back to normal after 6 weeks. Nobody would be back to exercising and climbing camelback after like the first week or two. It would be
Hmm.
natural to rest and ice and compress and elevate, but we don't treat postpartum, and we don't treat the pelvic floor and those connective tissues that way. And we need to start thinking of postpartum as a rest period and let those tissues recover.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I've not had any children. I had a hysterectomy. My recovery was 6 to 8 weeks. And I was not stretching muscles. I was not, having a baby gorilla, right? I was not doing any of that. And my recovery could have been extended even longer than our moms, whose bodies are going through this very, I mean, childbirth is amazing to me, and how the body, what it does, but like it is a trauma on the body of what's happening now. Obviously it's natural, but I see it all the time that, I even have clients who have older children who were those moms who went back at 6 weeks and are still dealing with issues today because they did not take the time to, or I shouldn't say they didn't, this is not their fault. They didn't have the education to help to rehab their bodies, as you were saying, in an appropriate amount of time for them, because I'm guessing every person is going to be a bit different. They just went by the guidelines, and still today they struggle with whether that's the lower belly pooch, prolapse, and well, mostly like incontinence. And with incontinence, I feel like we just laugh it off as women. We
Mm-hmm.
laugh it off, and we have, incontinence pads, and you go to CrossFit and you wear black that day if you're doing double unders. Like, these are things that I've
Right.
heard women say over and over and over again. And, for the moms out there, those who are postpartum, those who are pregnant, I want you guys to hear this. Like, you do not have to believe that you are okay or healed or whatever that is at the 6 week period. How long would you recommend on average women take the time to rehab their bodies after pregnancy?
And it's so interesting you brought that point up, because I just had a client come in this morning, and she's 8 weeks, and she looked so defeated. And it's only her second visit I've seen her. And I just said, what's going on? She's like, I just feel like I'm so behind. And I'm like, behind for what? And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't bounced back. I'm not back where I am supposed to be. And I'm like, where are you supposed to be? You're 8 weeks
Mm-hmm.
postpartum. You're taking care of this little human that needs everything from you. I don't know why we have such like expectations on ourselves and on other people to be like perfectly back to normal at 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I really think if we could start just putting the emphasis on like 6 weeks being like the starting line, and that for the
Mm-hmm.
first 6 weeks of postpartum, we just start, easing back into like some movement, some mobility, some walking, that would
Mm-hmm.
just serve people so much better because the pelvic floor after a vaginal delivery is only recovered 50% at 6 weeks. It is
Wow.
not 100% recovered. So we should not be doing CrossFit at 6 weeks. We should not be back to running at 6 weeks. This is where we should be seeing pelvic floor PT to start getting a program back so that we can ease back into those things safely so that we're not wearing black leggings to run and we're not wearing black leggings to CrossFit.
Right.
And I hate the fact that women come and say, yep, I have to wear black leggings to the gym because I don't want to leave.
Beautiful, beautiful listener and viewer, I'm asking you a huge favor. I am doing the American Cancer Society 300-mile ride in the month of October. What this consists of is over the course of the month, I have to ride 300 miles on my bike. And I'm doing this in an effort to help with funding research for cancer treatment. As you guys know, I lost my father to cancer a few months ago, and this is mine and my brother's way of supporting cancer research in hopes that people do not have to go through what we went through as a family. So if you would be so kind, whether it's 50 cents, a dollar, whatever it is that you can donate, check out the GoFundMe link in my show notes. The GoFundMe goes directly to the American Cancer Society. This is a link that they provided. My tush thanks you in advance. Now, let's get on with the show.
If you're leaking at CrossFit, your pelvic floor is literally yelling at you that it is not ready for that activity. And it's not that you can't do that activity for the rest of your life, but we need to fix why it's yelling at you.
Right. Well, like you use the ankle, you're not, if the ankle is not ready, you're not just going to go run, or maybe you get a cast off, you're going to ease back into doing whatever it is. But because I'm going to go on a tangent here, because it's like female reproductive organs, we act like they are this, like, what's the word I'm looking for? This part of the body that just magically is okay all the time, or if there's something wrong with it, we just look at it and say, well, that's just women. That's just being a woman. And it's so annoying. I think of periods, I think of perimenopause, I think of,
Mm-hmm.
prolapse, incontinence, all of these things. Like we just think it's just magically. I mean, listen, women are amazing. And yes, we are resilient. That's the word I was looking for. It is resilient, but it needs time. And we don't think about it like if I broke my arm, if I had a major surgery on another part of the body, we think of it separately as
Mm-hmm.
a separate thing that's just super resilient and will just pop right back. On top of that, we have society that tells us from a mental standpoint that we have to look a certain way at that 6 weeks as well, which is obviously what my program works on is, well, let's talk about like where, like you said to your client today, like, well, where you think you should be, this bounce back mentality only,
Mm-hmm.
it only affects, it affects not only your thoughts about yourself, but then you're gonna do behaviors like exercise too soon, and then
Mm-hmm.
we have long-term issues after that. It's just us ladies, we've really been, we do all the things, we create all of the life, but we've really been given the short end of the stick in the way that we think about our bodies, especially our reproductive organs. So I'm gonna come back get off of my little train there. Okay. What are some signs that show that if a client was having, they would understand, okay, there's something going on here. My pelvic floor is not functioning optimally, or when should someone seek support from someone like you?
Yep. So the first 6 weeks postpartum, a lot of things actually can be normal. So if you have ab separation, like squishy
Hmm.
belly is kind of like, let's be like very like layman's terms here. Like If your belly's a little squishy, great. If you are having some leaking, whether it's urination, whether it's fecal matter, whether you're having some pelvic heaviness, that actually can be normal after a vaginal delivery.
Mhm.
Anytime after that, after having a baby, or anytime we're talking about a woman that has never had a baby, if you are leaking with sneezing, coughing, jumping, laughing, running, anytime outside of like pregnancy or postpartum, that is no longer normal. If you have a very high urgency to urinate or to have bowel movements, not normal. If you have the feeling that you cannot fully empty your bladder or have a complete bowel movement, not normal. If you have just a sense of like pelvic heaviness, a golf ball sensation in the vaginal canal, not
Mm.
normal. The one that actually surprised me quite a bit when I was learning to be a pelvic floor PT, chronic low back pain, chronic tailbone pain that you have seen another pelvic, I'm sorry, you've seen an orthopedic PT, you've seen orthopedic physicians. A lot of time, chronic low back tailbone pain is associated with the pelvic floor because if you were to pull up a model of the pelvic floor attaches to the tip of the tailbone. So if you're
Mhm.
ignoring the pelvic floor with chronic tailbone pain, you're missing a piece of the picture, which I tell clients this all the time. If I could go back to my baby orthopedic PT self, I am so sorry to those clients I treated those first 5 years. I
Right.
did not know any better. I am very sorry. I missed that piece. So I'm very sorry. So
Yes.
that's my
You were
fault.
doing what you knew, and now you
I
know
didn't know any
more, you
better.
do better. Right.
So if you're struggling with chronic tailbone pain and you don't think that PT is the answer, reach out to a pelvic floor PT because that could be that missing piece. And it might just be that one little thing that needs to be released or addressed to really make a big
Mhm.
difference. And then
Yes.
also for men or women, if you've got that doming down the midline of your abdomen, a bulging, low ab bulging, that could also indicate pelvic floor issues because the
Mhm.
pelvic floor is the bottom of the pelvis that we talked about, but it's also the base of the core system. And it's making up the diaphragm, which is your breathing muscle, your abdominals, your pelvic floor, and your back muscles. That's your true core canister. So if
Mhm.
you're going to an exercise class and they're just talking about the core, they're not just talking about the abs. They're actually talking about the abs plus the pelvic floor plus the breathing muscles. So you want to make sure you're focusing on all those different components.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that you brought up the lower back pain because I see that so often and I tell clients, I say, okay, this is go see your doctor, rule out if it's anything, physiological orthopedic surgeon needs to take care of, or seeing someone who's a physical therapist. But most of the time I'm like, and let's add in some of the pelvic floor strengthening movements, right?
Mhm.
For me, I have all the symptoms of a very tight pelvic floor. And I find that there are times where I will deadlift and I will feel that just this like pop. And I have impeccable form. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I'm constantly thinking about my form, but I realize that having that tight pelvic floor and lifting at times is one of the main reasons why I feel that lower back pain. And a lot of my clients struggle with it to the point where they won't even deadlift or lift in a hip hinge because they're so afraid of hurting their backs
Mhm.
again. And so I'm glad you brought that up so you guys can hear like maybe we need to be looking at options like seeing someone like yourself rather than going to the chiropractor or going, wherever they're going. I mean, people will try
Mhm.
everything when their back is hurting, Eh,
Right, but who would think pelvic floor, right? Like I
mhm.
wouldn't
Right.
necessarily. Like you're talking about back pain. Like we don't necessarily think, oh, it's my pelvic floor.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And then also, I get a lot of moms. I just want this pooch to go away, this belly pooch. And we go into, once they're ready, of course, traditional calorie deficit, their strength training, doing all the right things, but their structure of their body, that lower pooch just is always there, and it frustrates the hell out of them. You know, what for that type of client, what are things that they can do that maybe traditional coaching or personal trainers are doing wrong?
I often find with those moms is they're strong because a lot of our pregnant mom, like pregnant people, right? We're strong
Mhm.
because we're in our 20s, 30s, early 40s. We have these babies, we're still really strong. So I kind of joke with people at their 6 weeks. I can put those people in a full plank. I can put them in a side plank. I could probably have them do a full sit up, bicycle crunches. The problem is we tend to compensate with the rectus six pack muscles first. We use external obliques. What we tend to miss is those deep, low abs. So when
Mhm.
I have those moms stand up or even sit and really do like a deep core engagement, a lot of times what I see is they're using the upper abs first. They're not getting those low abs to kick in at all. Or if they are, they're using them second. So when I have
Mm.
them say, can you use their like draw in your abs? They're seeing a lot of upper abs, nothing low abs. So those are the moms we really have to focus on. Engage the pelvic floor first and then try to pull in below the belly button,
Mhm.
then pull in the
I'm doing it
rest of
with
the
you.
abdominal abs. Because otherwise, what we see is just that like upper ab, almost like when we're taking like a picture or a selfie and we're kind of like sucking everything in.
Mhm.
Then you're seeing those like low abs. And I almost like the thing that I tend to tell my clients is imagine I'm holding like a water balloon and I'm squeezing just the top of the water balloon. You can imagine the bottom of that water balloon is going to get really, really big and swollen. And the
Mhm.
problem with that, then when we're thinking of pelvic floor, is that I keep putting a lot of pressure through my low ab pooch. That's actually a lot of pressure down on my pelvic floor. And if I
Mhm.
keep putting more and more and more pressure on my low abs and my pelvic floor, eventually that can actually lead to leaking and prolapse symptoms because there's just so much pressure down. So we
Right.
really want to get away from that like upper ab squeezing and contraction. And we want
Mhm.
to make sure we're engaging the entire abdominal wall, but especially those low abs.
Mhm. No, I think that's so I'm when you're saying it, I'm doing it as I'm sitting here. But it's true. And it's interesting for these particular clients because their upper abs are so defined. They'll
Yep.
have actual like definition and then it'll be like a line and then they'll
Yes.
have
And
the
nothing.
pooch. Right.
And they'll be so upset because they're like, everything looks really great on those clients. And it does, but
Yes.
it's because they really train those muscles and they cannot find the low abs. And that's actually especially true for moms that have had C-sections because now we've added
Mhm.
in that extra layer of scar tissue or that disconnect from the mind to body brain connection because of that, like
Mhm.
that surgery, which
Yeah.
may be the case too for other women that have had hysterectomies because they've also disrupted that abdominal wall with the surgical incisions.
Yeah. One thing that helped me when I was preparing for my surgery, and I, again, this 2017, I just, with my own knowledge, did this on my own, is I really was like, okay, I'm going to be very weak in this area. So I want to strengthen, my glutes, my back muscles, my obliques, my upper abs, even my hip flexors. And I really focused on that area. And I really believe that that helped me in my recovery with the hysterectomy because I was up and at 'em walking. I walked 3 times around the hospital floor before the doctor even came for her rounds. Yes. And
Yay.
she let me go home without even seeing me, like without going through rounds. I went home and then I walked from there. The only thing that I really had discomfort was when I had bowel movements. And I've shared this on the pod before. And so the vaginal cuff is there, and I can almost feel this feeling of it like hitting the cuff itself that stopped me in my tracks for like 30 seconds when it happened. But I do feel like that was incredibly helpful. And I know we weren't going to talk about this, but is there things women can do for those just moving over to someone maybe having like abdominal surgery, like a hysterectomy, to prepare better, to have better outcomes and better recovery?
So the thing I would actually add when it comes to especially a hysterectomy is a lot of times they're tacking things up near the sacrum, so near the tailbone. So I would
Mm.
actually work a lot on like tailbone mobility. So whether that's
Okay.
cat cows, where it's like laying on your back doing pelvic tilts, pelvic circles, because there's also some connective tissue, which is getting a little bit in depth, but like connective
Go
tissue that's
for it.
attaching where your vaginal cuff is then attaching to the rectum. So when
Hmm.
you're having bowel movements, it's actually pulling a lot on that tissue, which can make constipation more common. It can make bowel movements more common. So just making sure that you've got really good mobility of the tailbone so that it's not getting really sticky and like stuck there.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, actually making sure that up the chain in the spine, your thoracic spine, mid back has really good mobility because
Hmm.
we've got some good studies that show that tightness in like the upper back thoracic region actually
Hmm.
impacts that like tailbone to low back to like pelvic floor mobility and like
Hmm.
flexibility. So for people that actually have a tight pelvic floor, I go up first and look to see how flexible they are in their upper back and if like they need to stretch their pecs because so many people that are tight in here were sitting so much. So here is tight and then they were sitting so much so it's actually making the tailbone really really tight. So I would
Hmm.
have looked a little bit more on like spinal mobility and all of the amazing strengthening that you did to prepare. So
Hmm.
more stretching on top of all the strengthening you did.
Ugh, I'm like, I I totally get it. Like I'm so tight up here. I carry all of my tension here. I mean, to the point where I have like a bicep impingement. Like it hurts to go back this way because of my arm.
Yes.
Again, every time I talk to someone, I'm like, okay, no, I've got to set the appointment. So let's come back because we have not talked about prolapse very much on this podcast. And I know that, we work with clients together who struggle with prolapse, and a lot of the clients, our listeners, may struggle and not even know that that's what they're struggling with. So, can you break it down? Like, what is pelvic floor prolapse, and
Hmm.
what might a woman experience if that's something she's struggling with?
Yes. So, number one, prolapse is not an old person thing. And
Thank
I
you for
say
saying
that
that.
because when I was doing my very first course in pelvic floor, I remember specifically getting to the chapter on prolapse and being like, I don't even want to read this because I'm not going to work with older women. I want to work with pregnancy. I want to work with postpartum. I'm in my 30s. This is not my jam.
Right.
Right. Then I read the chapter because I had to. And I realized that, and honestly, these studies have changed quite a bit. So these stats have changed. Prolapse is very, very common after vaginal deliveries. And back then, we were thinking it was common like in the 30s. Newer studies are
Mm.
actually saying we might have like down that number quite a bit. It could be as high as 70s, 80s, even 90% of vaginal deliveries, depending on how we're grading it. If we're thinking of the pelvic floor, it's the hammock. So it's holding up the bladder, it's holding up the uterus, it's holding up the bowels.
Mhm.
Over time, the hammock is going to get stretched in all of us. But if we also have a vaginal delivery, that hammock is going to get a lot more stretched. So, with time or with a vaginal delivery, we're going to end up with some holes, and that can actually cause a little bit more sagging down. So, for women that may not know if they have a prolapse, we might have a sensation of heaviness. We might feel like we're having a bulge in the vaginal canal. We might feel pressure. So, a lot
Mhm.
of people have no idea that that's what they're experiencing. And the other way that I've learned it is if you're thinking inside of the body, you could think of having three canals or three like bowling lanes. So, you've got the urethra, which is going from the bladder out. You've got the vaginal canal, uterus out. You've got the rectum out.
Mhm.
And it's not that your organs are actually falling out of your body, it's that the bladder is kind of merging into the vaginal canal tissue. You've got your rectum that's
Mm.
kind of merging into the vaginal tissue, and you've got their uterus that might
Okay.
be just dropping down. So you've just
Yeah.
got things that are kind of merging. So if you're
Hmm.
feeling a bulge, it's not that your actually bladder is falling out. Your tissues are not actually falling out of your body. It's just they've kind of merged because that hammock is not holding them
Holding
up
him
where they're
up.
supposed to be going.
Yeah, interesting. I'm just imagining it's just like very crowded,
It's
and
yes.
not only is it crowding, but again, it's putting that pressure and pushing down. So I want you guys to hear that and think about, how you're feeling. I'm curious, and you may not know the answer to this, but maybe you do. What do people think it is when it's actually prolapse? They think they just like have like they're constipated all the time, like
A lot of people think they're constipated. A lot of people think their organs are actually falling out of their body.
okay,
That's what really
that's
scares them. So
scary.
they'll hear that and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, an organ's falling out." And it's not, because we do have those like ligaments that are holding things up. We've got different like backup systems. So your
Mhm.
organs are not falling out. Like you're not going to lose an organ. So
Right. Thank
let's
God.
just get that out there. It's like you're not going to lose anything. But it can be scary when you hear something like, "Oh my gosh, it's falling out." It's not dangerous in 99.9% of the cases. There's a very, very rare case where a small intestine can drop and get pinched, but
Mm.
honestly, it's so very rare. You would have symptoms that are like fever, nausea. You would feel so sick that you would know something is really, really wrong with you.
Mhm.
So if you were noticing any kind of symptoms that are like the heaviness, the bulge, it's not dangerous.
Mhm. That's
And
good.
the positive too is we used to just say that there was no other options but surgery for so many of these people. And the type of surgery you may have heard would be the mesh
Mesh.
surgeries or the bladder surgeries where things were lifted up. Those are still common. Those are common for more severe cases. And the positives, though, is pelvic therapy, pelvic floor therapy is very positive now. And we can do really beneficial things to help lift those organs back up. And then we also have things called pessaries, which are medical devices that can help to kind of support those tissues as they heal. And we use them with muscle strength training,
Mhm.
just to kind of lift and support that hammock so that things can heal a little bit more on their own rather than requiring surgery to kind of lift everything back up in
Yeah.
a surgery.
No, that's wonderful. And I'm familiar with the mesh and the surgery. I was terrified. And for some reason, I thought that someone told me when she had a hysterectomy, they like nicked her bladder, and that's why she needed to have this prolapse surgery. Don't I may be completely wrong, but that's what I thought it was, that they like messed up something in there when really it's just this natural part of, in the case you're talking about like childbirth. Obviously in my situation it would be different, but I love that you brought that up. Like I think we try, physical therapy and give it the time that it deserves. That's a big thing with a lot of clients. They
Mhm.
obviously want to feel better as quickly as possible, but give it the time and patience that it deserves and use the resources that you have and see how you're feeling over time and always having surgery be obviously the last option, right? I'm curious too, another thing that I see clients with is after pregnancy is that rib flare. And for them, again, if we bring in everything that I do with body image and trying to reframe this, getting your baby body back and losing the baby weight, we reframe that. We say, we're not comparing to our previous bodies, but also now we have this kind of structural change in the
Mhm.
body and they look in the mirror and it's just compounding on top of the body image issues. What is rib flare, number one, and how is it
Mhm.
connected with pelvic health and core stability?
Mhm. So if you were to put your hands on your rib cage, our ribs naturally get a little bit wider as our pregnancy progresses for most women because we have to make room for these humans.
Right.
Because once again, uterus grows from about the size of a fist to about the size of a watermelon. And
Mhm.
unless we are really, really tall, we need to make space for these babies. So the ribs go out to make space. Part of what ends up happening is when the ribs go out, they don't naturally come back in for everybody. And a good way to test this at home, if you're sitting here right now, is two different ways. So, one is if you feel like your bra strap, not necessarily like the size of your breast tissue if you're still breastfeeding, but if your bra strap doesn't feel the same or is tighter than it was during pre-pregnancy, that's often a good indication that you have rib flare. And then
Mm-hmm.
the other one is if you were to go from your sternum, which is that breastbone, and then look at that point where your breastbone goes to your ribs, it should be about a 90-degree angle. So if it's wider than a 90-degree
Mm.
angle, that's a rib flare. And if it's narrower, that's actually a little bit too small of a rib flare. Why that really matters is 90 degrees is going to be the optimal angle for where your diaphragm sits. And your
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm is that breathing muscle that lives right underneath the rib cage. Diaphragm connects directly to your low abs to your pelvic floor. And when we breathe naturally on the inhale, the ribs go out, the diaphragm drops, the pelvic floor drops. The exhale, everything comes up, the ribs come in. So
Mm-hmm.
when the rib flare is the right angle and not flared out past 90, everything's working really well. From a cosmetic side, that actually makes our physique look the way that we really want it to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're allowed to want to be functionally ideal, optimal, the way that we're intended to be built posturally. We're also allowed to cosmetically be the way that we want to look and feel after we
Absolutely.
have kids. Like there
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a one or another. I think
Nope.
we can be realistic about the time frame. We can be realistic about how long it takes based on hormones and diet and exercise. But I think
Mm-hmm.
we are allowed to want both of those things.
Absolutely. And I agree with that. A lot of people are like, well, how do you help women aesthetically while you're also helping them with body image? And we tell them, we're coming from a place of respect, right? Respecting your body, wanting to move your body, feed it healthy foods, but also respecting your mind and your thoughts around your body. So I am with you on that. I want women to be thinking about their bodies in a way that is respectful and loving, but also loving and respecting what they see, in the
Yeah,
mirror. So I absolutely agree.
it can be both. We're
Yes,
complicated people. It's okay.
it's so divisive. So I used to work I worked in all levels of care of eating disorder treatment. And it's interesting because I have clients that now come to me after eating disorder inpatient and they want to work with me specifically because I create a different approach. And when I start talking to therapists now, they're like, yeah, treatment really has no functional application in real life. And it became very black or white. It was like you're either in your eating disorder or you're not. And in your eating disorder included exercise, included wanting to look a certain way and this, that, and the other thing. And so it's very black and white. And I feel like the same is true in the diet culture world. It's either health at every size, like all food is good food. It doesn't matter what you look like. You shouldn't care about what you look like, or the complete opposite, right? Very restrictive, like
Mm-hmm.
very body focused when like you and I, we live in the middle, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
middle and you want to feel good about yourself. And like you said, making sure though first that it's functional. Then we can add the aesthetics, right? Because if you're getting
Right.
there, if you're getting to the aesthetics and your body's all screwed up, it's going to come, it'll catch up to you over time. But okay, a few more questions. I love that we talked about rib flare, we talked about prolapse. I want to talk to you because I know that you work with athletes and returning back to sport. I feel like we could do a whole podcast on that, but just for women returning back to sport or high impact activity, what should they know about like safely rebuilding the pelvic floor strength, even like our CrossFitters or women who
Mm-hmm.
who lift heavy?
Yep. So number one, it's think of that 6 weeks as your starting point. So
Mhm.
not to say don't do anything for 6 weeks. Like do like ease into it. Think of it as you roll that ankle, take it easy the first couple weeks, and then kind of start easing back into things. So I even have clients that start doing like body weight squats, lunges before the 6 week mark, but
Mhm.
ease into things at 6 weeks, then start that as like the starting mark. Do not go back to CrossFit running at 6 weeks. So for my runners, what I start doing at that 6 week mark is we start doing a lot of like glute heavy inner thigh, like adductor stuff, making sure we're getting into those low abs. For runners, the most important thing we need to start making sure they can do is single leg squats,
Mhm.
single leg calf raises, skaters, so side to side dynamic work. They can do squat jumps, they can do forward, backward hops, all without leaking, all without tailbone hip pain, and all without any sense of pelvic heaviness. For lifters, we need to be able to obviously have really good form with our squats, lunges, hip hinge, RDLs, body weight first before we're adding in weight. We need to make sure no tailbone pain, no hip pain, no leaking, and no heaviness. Then we're progressively adding in weight. And then a lot of times with my lifters is I'm getting their form down first without pain or pelvic floor concerns. Then I'm sending them to amazing humans like you because you're going to be able to progress them in terms of how to go from like the free weights to the bar to the everything else way better than I can in my tiny little, square box office. Right. You've got all the tools. But the biggest thing with any lifters, whether it's doing it in their, garage gym to doing it in like the most amazing $1 million like facility, is moms early on postpartum, do not hold your breath. When you're holding your breath, you are creating a lot of pressure down on the pelvic floor. So yes, I've got moms that get back to Valsalva, the ones that are getting into really, really heavy lifting, but you need to be working with somebody that's very trained with that. And that is not appropriate in the first 12 weeks postpartum. We need to be really focusing on an exhale so we can get that natural pelvic floor lift. And at any point, if you're getting back into CrossFit, heavy lifting, and you're noticing a bulge sensation, if you're noticing leaking, you have got to stop. This is not something that's going to get better on its own. It's not going to reverse itself. Your body is yelling at you that it's way too much pressure down on the pelvic floor.
Yeah. Good to know. Yeah, my girlies who are pregnant now, one of them is one of my heavy lifters. And I'm so proud of her because she has trusted the process and, she's still lifting. She's very nauseous in her first trimester. So we're just trying, she's in her second trimester now. But for someone who is like lifted so heavy for so long, I'm proud of her for allowing herself to pull back. But I anticipate, and she's listening, that she'll be the one who will want to get right back into it. So that was for you, if you're listening. Awesome. Anything else? Anything else that we didn't? I mean, there's so many things we didn't cover, but in regards to the conversations we've had today, that you can leave our listeners with.
So a couple things I always love to share is, please stop upper ab gripping. So go to the bathroom mirror after this call. Stop upper ab gripping. We all look amazing. You don't need to suck it in all day long. It is going to put so much pressure down on your pelvic floor over the course of your lifetime. You all look amazing. Just stop sucking it in all day long. Yes. On the flip side, stop clenching your cute little butts. Just relax your low butts. It's going to cause so much tension around your tailbone. So just chill out the upper abs, chill out your poor little tailbones, let them breathe, chill out. And then one of the best things you can do for your pelvic floor is stop just in case peeing, except before and after sex.
Yes.
Pelvic floor 101.
I do 2 out of 3 of those things. Whenever I get Botox, I just clench my little buns. I'm like, because it hurts.
Yeah, relax those cute little buns.
Yes. And we went to I was traveling this weekend and you're going to yell at me. I went to the bathroom 3 times on my layover, which was less than an hour because I was so concerned with having to get up. I know.
Your bladder is so sad. Don't do that.
It is. My bladder is very sad. Awesome. Well, thank you. And I promise listeners, I'm going to set an appointment so you can deal with all of my trauma down there because
there we go.
Being a dancer for 25 years and some of the crazy shit they made us do, I'm surprised. I don't have organs falling out. So I will definitely make the appointment. You guys can hold me accountable. Please tell everyone where they can find you to follow along with all of your goodies online.
So Instagram at your.pelvicfloor.pt.
Yeah, love it. Please, please, please give Megan a follow. And again, I thank you so much for this. For you guys listening, I know you've got that girl chat, that mom chat. Send this podcast. Y'all need to hear it. They need to hear it. Also, Dr. Megan does do online, not consulting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
pelvic floor wellness.
Pelvic floor wellness online. so you can access her, which is amazing. We will add that link in our bio. But yes, send this pod out to all the moms, all of your ladies, because y'all need to hear it. And when you send it out, please remind them to give us a follow or subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. And if you are interested in working with us one-on-one, you can also find the Clarity Call link in the show notes below. And I'm going to leave you, as I do every single week, and remind you of this one last thing, that what you say in your mind, you see in the mirror. Bye-bye.